And I am honored, gotta record. I am honored to be presenting to you all today. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website at 0to5.org. Before we dive into today, I would like to take a few moments to introduce myself, my wonderful colleagues, and share a little bit about our organization. My name is Alex Dubois, and I am the Policy and Engagement Manager with 0to5 Montana. Looking back, I really started my journey to my current position here, where I worked to advocate for the well-being of children, families, and providers many years ago. The first time I stepped into an early education program and fell in love with child development, then later becoming a mother myself. Both of these experiences have driven me to help others in our communities, to uplift their voices to our state's decision makers. As for my story now, and you can see on the screen, I live in Butte, Montana with my husband and our 5 children, our 2 dogs, and really truly love this beautiful state that we all call home. For our time together today, my colleague Sarah, give a little wave, will be helping out in the chat. Feel free to post any questions you have there. And then at the end of our session, we will circle back and get those answered. Please know, I truly believe that there's no bad question, so don't hesitate to ask. 0to5 Montana is a nonprofit, nonpartisan early childhood policy and advocacy organization with a promise to stabilize, build, and innovate the early childhood system so all Montana families and communities can thrive. Expanding on that a little bit more, it means that our organization works with both political parties, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and look really broadly at the whole early childhood system and the programs and supports that families with young children interact with. For example, we know childcare is a huge piece of the early childhood system, and we also know it's super complex. So some of the areas we are looking at to advocate for improvements include access and affordability for parents, as well as potential areas to help reduce childcare provider costs or boost their wages. Additionally, about 2 years ago, we expanded our organization to include our programmatic arm, Montana Childcare Business Connect, which many of you may be familiar with. Both our programmatic arm and our policy arm work really closely together to ensure that we're building an early childhood system that's really robust and supports all of the families and providers in Montana. Here is our wonderful team. I wanted to make sure and shout them out. We have both our programmatic team and our policy team. And again, we work really closely together. But I did want to note that today we're speaking as the policy team, which you'll see on the right side of the screen. But we're all here to really provide supports and resources to you. Today, I hope to provide you with some basic understanding of policy and advocacy, why it's important, and how you can engage in advocacy yourself. We'll also be sharing some ways that 0to5 Montana can help you through that journey, and ask you some questions at the end as well to get some more information to see how we can be more helpful. Previously, I mentioned who we are as an organization, and now to go a little bit further, I just wanted to briefly share with you what we do as a policy team. In essence, we really work hard to build relationships and work collaboratively with communities, other organizations, national partners, and parents and providers to ensure we're well informed about the issues that are bubbling up across our state, and that we can communicate that through policy solutions to our policy makers to improve our system. At the end of the day, we want families, young children, and providers to have the opportunity to be really healthy and successful. And then beyond our building of relationships, we ensure that we're doing really comprehensive research on the issues and topics, facilitating issue-based coalitions, and providing education and resources throughout communities. Okay, enough about us. The why of why you are here and why it's important that we're having this conversation. Whether or not you recognize it, policymakers, which you'll also hear called elected officials, legislators, decision makers, lawmakers, there's lots of titles that we give our elected officials, make decisions that affect every Montana every single day, and that includes you. These decisions affect you both personally and sometimes professionally. For example, in the last legislative session, legislators decided to increase the income guidelines for the Best Beginnings Child Care Scholarship, cap parent copayments, as well as reimburse child care providers based on a child's authorized amount instead of attendance. This is something that directly affected families in Montana, but it also directly affected childcare providers and their businesses. So that's just one example of why we should care about advocacy. Montana's government is structured very similar to our federal government, having three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Each of these branches play a role in the laws that govern our state, ensuring we have checks and balances in place. Today, I am focusing mainly on the legislative branch. However, I do want you to know there are opportunities to engage in advocacy within the executive branch as well. Montana is made up of 50 Senate districts and 100 House districts. Each citizen in Montana is represented by one senator and one representative. This is based on your address. As you can see in the graphic, there are some slight differences between the Senate and the House of Representatives, such as the length of time they serve. So a representative in the House will only serve a 2-year term, while a senator will serve a 4-year term. Both senators and representatives are elected to represent the constituents, or the people, that live in their district. So each of your representatives is representing you and the others in your district. The Montana legislature, all 150 of them, meet every 2 years for 90 working days. This is what we refer to as session or legislative session. Legislative session starts in January on odd number years. So our next session will be January 2025. Committees are a really important part of advocacy. The House and Senate both have committees that are focused on the same things during session called standing committees. So as you can see on this slide, the House has a committee called Human Services, where the Senate has a committee called Public Health, Welfare, and Safety. Both of those committees will be focused around the same topics or issues that are given to them. They just have different names. I don't know why they do that. It's super confusing, but good to know that they're there. In between sessions, like right now, the legislature has interim committees. both standing committees and interim committees have legislators that are sitting on those committees, and they're appointed to serve on those committees. The interim committees really work between sessions to study certain topics and oversee agencies such as the Department of Health and Human Services. These are important to remember because committees are the place that you as a citizen or you as a representative of your business or however you're showing up can provide public comment or testimony on the topics or issues or bills that the committees are talking about. So you've heard the word policy a little bit, and we hear it a lot, but what does it mean? It doesn't always mean legislation. There are things such as workplace policies. There's a whole wealth of ways to interpret the word. But for today, we're talking about legislative policies. Think bills and laws. And at its core, policy is a plan for action. Policy has the ability to really impact the issues that you care about the most or that affect you the most. Policy can be reactive and work to address a current pressing problem. So for example, on the local level, maybe there's an intersection where traffic is always at a standstill and always backed up. Citizens might be frustrated with this and go to their city government to express their concern. That city government may review and determine what potential policy solutions could help alleviate this. Maybe it's a roundabout. So they implement a reactive policy by putting in a roundabout to help the flow of traffic. A policy can also be preventative, aiming to provide a solution for an issue that we will most likely see or arise in the future. As an example, perhaps you live in a city or your state has a population of more older adults, and you know they're going to need support as they age. This city or state knows that we're going to need more healthcare workers to support them as they age. Elected officials could implement policies to encourage nurses and hospital workers to move to their city or state. This is an example of preventative policy. Policy change, whether reactive or preventative, is what we're talking about when we're talking about advocating for policy change in the early childhood system. Now, how does policy get put into place? I made you this little graphic to help illustrate the process. It's very complex, so this is a simplified version. So for today, for this exercise, we're going to start in the House chamber, the green. So a bill is introduced during legislative session in either the House or the Senate, also known as chambers. After it's first introduced, it'll be signed to a committee. Remember the standing committees, based on the topic of the draft bill and where it best fits. Where in that committee, in order to move it along its path to become a law, it will receive hearings and votes within the committee. Remember, this is where we provide public comment. If it passes out of that committee, the bill moves back up to the chamber, back up to the green, where it will receive a final vote of whether to pass or not. If everything goes great and it passes through that vote within its original chamber, then it will go through the whole process again in the opposite chamber. So in this case, the Senate. If it just moves on perfectly through the Senate. Then it goes on to the governor where he would sign it into law, not do anything, or veto it. Again, this is a very simplified version of this process, but it's good to note that there are multiple times that you can engage in advocacy within the committees, both on the House side and the Senate side. So sometimes when we're putting out like a call to action on a specific bill, it might be multiple times that you're going to be called to provide some action around a bill because there's multiple times to do that. Sarah's going to put a link in the chat for the Schoolhouse Rock video on how a bill becomes a law. If you've never seen it, please watch it. It's a great little video that gives a good explanation about how a bill becomes a law. And it focuses more around the federal process, but it's very much the same for state law. That was a very fast and furious rundown, soft touch of our legislature and policy and why it's important to advocate. Now let's talk about advocacy specifically. To boil it down, advocacy is the action, is your action to create change. Those that engage in advocacy can either be the voice for themselves or sometimes the voice for others. A lot of times when I was speaking about us building relationships with individuals at the community level, a lot of times we are speaking on behalf of what we know and what we hear from our communities. So there can be either or engagement. But do know that every citizen has the right to engage in the policymaking process. Something that I didn't touch on when I was talking about our legislature, our senators and our representatives, is that we have a citizen legislature, which means that all of our senators and all of our representatives are just average citizens like you that most of the time have another full-time job along with being an elected official. And so it's really good to remember that they're just people just like us, and they have to know a lot of information about a lot of different things. And so it's our jobs as citizens to share our knowledge, our experiences, and our potential solutions with them. We can't assume they're aware of everything that's happening in our communities and in our state. On the screen, you'll see our spectrum of engagement. We put this together to kind of help articulate some of the ways that you can engage in advocacy. And it's laid out from lower impact actions, such as signing a petition or subscribing to an action alert, all the way up to kind of higher impact actions like scheduling a one-on-one meeting with your legislator or providing public comment. Although the categories say low to high, I do want to note that this is not meant to diminish the value of the lower impact actions, because all of these actions are really important. And we know that everybody has their own personal capacity. So if all you can do is sign up for action alerts and stay informed and engaged, that's okay. And that's just as important as engaging in public testimony. So our elected officials exist at every level of government. So you can really advocate to a lot of people depending on what you're advocating for or where you want to advocate. Like I have said before, we're focusing mainly on advocating at the state level to our state elected officials, but many of the things that we talk about can can be used or done with your local government or the federal government. So keep that in mind as we're going. As for local government, advocating to the school board is something you could do. At the state government, our legislators or our agencies like DPHHS. And then along with your state representatives, you also have federal representatives. So they're there to represent you as well. And don't worry, if you don't know who your elected officials are, we have created a nice little tool for you that can help you find all of your elected officials. This is our Find Your Elected Officials tool. And all you have to do is put your street address in and your zip code, and it'll populate who your representatives are. So if you haven't done that, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a super handy tool and real quick. So that's a good first start. So now you know who your elected officials are. How do you contact them? Well, that tool that I just shared on the last one will give you all the contact information you need for your elected officials, but there is a variety of ways that you can contact your legislators. You can email them, you can call them on the phone, you can send them mail, and I do believe you can still fax them if you really want to fax them. You never know. So there's just a variety of ways to connect with them. Some of them are on social media as well, and that can also be a way to contact them or tag them in things that you are speaking about. And then for legislative session, there is also a legislative switchboard, which is in operation. And that's really used if you want to leave a message for 1 to 5 legislators or a whole committee. You can call the legislative switchboard and a lovely person will answer, and you can give them a message and then hang up, and they will deliver the message to the legislators or committees or committee or whoever you're wanting to contact. So that can be a really nice way to get your message to your elected officials if you're nervous about talking to them. So put that number in your phone, have it handy, and use it if you feel a little uncomfortable. Okay, crafting your message. Sometimes it can feel, I know when I was first trying to craft my messages to my elected officials, it felt a little daunting. And so I really like to use this triangle framework to help me craft my messages, or if I'm helping others craft their messages. So if you're wanting to talk about a specific issue, you'll first want to decide what that issue is. You're going to be much more successful if you talk about a specific issue versus like a social problem. So a specific issue might be affordability of childcare, where a social problem is more like poverty. Issues are going to be much more tangible when you're speaking to your legislator. Second, you'll want to know what the opportunity is and be informed about the issue. So this is where your expertise or your story or your data is going to come in handy. So you have your issue, and then you have the information about the issue or the opportunity. And then third, you'll go into your solution. So it's always good to come in with a potential solution if possible. Um, And then last, I just always want to reiterate, be really clear and concise when you're talking to legislators. Write out your issue, your opportunity, your solution. Practice what you're going to say. It doesn't have to be verbatim, but it can help you stay clear and on point when you're speaking to your legislators. Again, we have to remember that they most likely have two jobs, and they are strapped for time sometimes as well. So being really clear and concise and saying thank you for taking the time to listen to you and or meet with you or read your email and respond. We want to always be respectful when speaking to our legislators or other elected officials. So I mentioned telling your story around the opportunity of the triangle. Storytelling, so really giving the true lived experience of yourself can be a very, very powerful advocacy strategy. In fact, some sources will tell you that stories are 22 times more memorable than data alone. And so if you do have the opportunity to bring in your own story, I highly encourage you to do so. I know that when our team is listening or working with legislators as they bring up new ideas or bring up new issues to talk about, they oftentimes reference a personal story that came to them directly from one of their constituents. So really just keep that in mind when you're speaking to them. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to share a story with you from a parent that we have worked with in the past. And as you're watching this, I really encourage you to keep an eye out for the issue, the personal experience or data opportunity, and then the solution within the story.
My husband and I love our jobs. It's something that we care deeply about, and we enjoy the opportunity to be able to work and also care for our kids. We were looking for care when I was about 3 months pregnant. It took us about a year to get into our preferred provider. The most that we have paid for childcare was about $1,600 a month. It's more than our mortgage payment. It's something that we've certainly had to make significant changes to our monthly budget process in order to cover. My ability to work was significantly impacted by a lack of available childcare. I was lucky enough to have an employer who understands the situation and was able to allow me some flexibility with remote work. The biggest thing for me when I was looking for childcare was quality. I wanted folks that were there consistently, that they didn't have a lot of employee turnover, and that really provided a safe environment for my girls to learn and thrive. My family has benefited a lot from our children attending a high quality childcare in Montana. I would say they are very social, they're very active, and I notice that they pick up on things really quickly. They're very talkative. High quality childcare allows us to be able to work. I feel like it makes me a better mom and a better parent because I am refreshed and I come back to my kids and I'm more patient. An investment in children to that scale. We're talking about making childcare affordable, allowing families to stay home with their kids without worry, with paid family leave, and accessing public preschool so that their children have the best start possible to their education. I don't think it's possible to understate the impact that that would have, not just on our family, but on all families in Montana and just across the nation. I think we owe it to our children in the state to give them the best start that they can to life. And I think that's a great way to do that.
Oh, goodness. Excuse me. Okay, back on track. Okay, we've learned a little bit about policy or legislature, advocacy. Now moving into how 0 to 5 Montana can be a support and resource to you as you dive into advocacy. So first, I want to talk about our supports during legislative session, every 90 days on odd number of years. So during session, we offer bill tracking specific to early childhood. During session, there is a ton of bills that vary on what they are addressing. And so we recognize the need to track only early childhood related bills. And so that's what we offer. If you haven't seen our bill tracker from the 2023 session, Sarah put it in the chat, feel free to check it out. It's still up there. And this can just help you be informed about what is happening with the bills that we really care about. We also offer weekly updates on what's happening during session related to early childhood. We do this through social media. We also do this through a Zoom call to ensure that you're getting up-to-date information. Legislative session moves very, very quickly. And so it's really hard to keep track of it. So that's what we're here for. We're here to keep them informed and up to date. We send out action alerts or really important information with our advocacy list, which you'll be able to join if you're not already a part of it, on one of the later slides. And then we're also here to just provide general information, resources, or assistance if you need help. Engaging in advocacy can feel really overwhelming or daunting or even scary. And we really want to be here to help alleviate that feeling for you. So please know that we are here as a resource. Here are some current events and/or advocacy opportunities to bring us to today. What can you be doing? As mentioned previously, there are interim committees that are meeting regularly between 2023 session ended and up till 2025 session starts. Two of these to note for you is the Children, Families, Health and Human Services Interim Committee, who oversee Department of Public Health and Human Services rulemaking process, which hold the child care licensing rules and regulations. They oversee that. Currently, they have put a pause or an objection to those proposed child care rules and regulations. So they're a committee that you're going to want to be paying attention to. Another committee is the Economic Affairs Interim Committee. They're looking at how childcare impacts our economy in the state and looking at, they were very interested in looking at why some childcare providers are having trouble with either finding or affording public liability insurance and potentially finding some solutions to help alleviate that barrier for childcare providers. So that's another one that you can be paying attention to or engaging with. There's some lower impact opportunities available. There's an early childhood systems needs assessment out, which DPHHS and some of within their grant, their preschool development grant, is looking to get feedback on from parents and providers about how our early childhood system is working, and potential areas to address with their grant funds. You can always, always, always build relationships with your elected officials. Reach out to them. Just say, I want to meet and learn more about what you care about. Have you thought about childcare? Have you thought about early childhood? There's always opportunities to do that. And if nothing else, it's great to be informed about election years, which this year is an election year, and make sure you're voting and voting to where you want to see, voting to the people that you want to see in these spaces and representing you as a citizen. And here are some ways that you can engage with 0 to 5 Montana right now. We have Montana Parent Voice, which is a statewide parent advocacy network, really dedicated to increasing awareness around the critical early childhood issues in Montana. We recognize there wasn't a great sole place for parents to go around early childhood. And so that's a Facebook group and an Instagram group. And it's just a great way for parents to stay updated and involved in early childhood advocacy. Please, 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 if you haven't and want to, join our advocacy listserv. This is how we can get information out to you about important things that are upcoming, events, legislative updates. Sarah will share that link in the chat. Of course, always join our newsletter, follow us on social media. These are just some great ways to stay involved and informed about early childhood issues in Montana and advocacy opportunities. And last but not least, we love to create resources to make it easier for those within our communities to advocate. These are just a couple snapshots of some of the resources that we've created. We have one-pagers, workbooks, tip sheets. Again, just there to make the process easier for you. However, we know that there's always room for improvement and always room to provide more resources and education. So please take a moment. I'm going to give just a couple minutes. If you would please take this survey to let us know the additional information or resources that we can provide to you. To continue to build your advocacy skills or engagement in early childhood advocacy. We love your feedback and love giving you guys what you need to be successful. So I'm just going to pause there for a few moments. And overall, we just want you to know that we're here as a resource and a partner in improving our early childhood system in Montana and helping you advocate for the issues and topics that are most important to you and most important to your communities. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments, and please feel free to reach out either to our general info at 0to5.org email or my email, alexd@0to5.org, with any follow-up questions that pop up maybe after our time here today or whatever you need. But I'm going to stop sharing so you can see if there's any questions that have come up. Sarah, was there any questions during the session? Doesn't look like it. Oh, unable to get this to work.
Yeah. Can we share it in the chat?
Try a little reshare.
Alex, I have a question. It's
Yeah.
Felicity. Hello. So okay. My first of all, I love the way you explained all of it. That was so great. Um, I can this be used like for your county also? I'm having issues because our county is not communicating with the early childhood providers in our county for this new House bill coming out. And so I have, right, I'm sorry, 352 for the early
Mhm.
literacy. Yes. And so I have lost families. I'm lost as a provider when I have all these kids that this bill now affects. And our county is just not communicating. They're not being like, we're not collaborating. And so it's really frustrating to when you talk about, like the structure of what a early childhood education, um, I don't even know what you call it, system, right?
Mhm.
Works. Well, it doesn't work because no one's trying to make it work. So I am curious of like, where do I even start? Like, what would it be a county thing to go to like or would it start at the school board? At our school board? This is where yeah.
Caitlin, go ahead. I saw you come off mute.
Well, I I'm happy to help answer, but Alex, do you? I was just gonna say that my first suggestion is to go to the school board
Okay.
and talk to them because it's all within House Bill 352 is like all supposed to be coordinated through local school board. So that's where I would suggest you start. But
And that's where I thought. However, then the school, even the superintendent, is like directing me to what they call like a parent liaison or something. And she's with the health department that is that is the one who's like setting up all of these, like the early literacy programs. And so I am so lost as like who does what, I guess. And that I can't get to the bottom of it. And I'm so frustrated.
where are you at again?
Mineral County.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which a lot of, early child education in general is like, we're kind of the first concept of it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of new things that people are trying to understand about it, which I get. But I just don't know. I just don't know who, like, yeah. I'm lost. I'm just like, someone just talk to me. Like, I know what I'm doing, right? I got it. Like, let me help. Let me be a part of the table. Like, just let me be at the table for
Yeah.
this to like understand this. And there's been no collaboration or anything. So I'm like, I don't even know what to do. So I guess I'll just go to the school board and be like, make your superintendent work with me. Is that basically what I need to say? Okay.
Probably. And it's like a tricky bill because I think every school district is probably trying to figure this out. And I
Right.
think there's a lot of superintendents that are still not exactly sure what this is and what it means for their, schools. So yeah, I would say just try going to this like and just asking like it sounds like you've already done this, but like
Right.
how do we start this process and like even trying to figure out what they are looking at in terms of the program, like what they're going to be doing, and then
Mhm.
like if they're and maybe even it's like if there's an absence of like coordination or connections happening at the community level, maybe that's something you can even like ask like, hey, can I help to support a conversation around this? Or is there a conversation happening and we want to be there and help support this because
Okay.
that's really important. And also, I don't know if it's on your radar, but in a few weeks in Missoula at the has their summit.
Yeah. Yes. I want to go so bad.
We're
Yeah.
gonna have like some conversations there, but I think that what you're experiencing is across the board a
Is
common
it?
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
there's not a lot of like centralized coordination. I don't think anyone really knows like who to go to for what, but I think that's one of the outcomes or one of the hopes in having that summit is that we can develop some
Yeah, right.
informed resources that can help.
Right. Okay.
Alex, do you have
Okay.
any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think all of what I echo all of what Caitlin said.
Yeah,
There's
just like willingness, right? Like just the willingness to like work
yeah,
with those who have kids going into these programs. Because yeah, okay, cool.
and just don't let them forget that you're there in serving young children too. And I think there's definitely an opportunity for you to show up and say, you know, I'm part of this system and we want to serve as many children as we can the best way that we can, and let's make sure that we're doing that together. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All the advice.
I just put in the chat too, but we're gonna hopefully over time be able to put more resources up here around related to early literacy, but I think what you're experiencing is what we could kind of see like the foreshadowing. So when this bill was going through, like, how is this coordination going to happen at the local level, and trusting that this is all local control and that, but I think this is all new. So yeah, I'd start there and keep us posted on how things go too, because we want to know what we can do from a systems approach too, in terms of creating any materials or guides or anything like that that might be helpful in supporting that level of communication and having those conversations, because it will take a lot of coordination and it's like time's a ticking. So yeah, we're interested in knowing how that's happening and what we can do to help support any of this.
Yeah, yeah. You hit the nail on the head when I said like time's ticking, right? Yeah, for programs looking to enroll, right, in the fall, we can't do anything until we know if those older kids are gonna move on to these early literacy programs or not, or and then families and then affordability. Like it just like it's a domino effect. So for sure.
Thanks, Felicity. Yeah, and all that information is really helpful for us to have so we can figure out ways that we can support communities. Any other questions? I don't know what was wrong with the survey. I double checked on the back end and it is open and live. So if you didn't get through, try again. Had to go in and out of the survey. Weird. I've never had problems with SurveyMonkey. Thanks, Elizabeth. Any last questions about policy, advocacy, how we can help? Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Again, if things come up, please reach out. We're here to help. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day.